As a teacher, I get asked a lot, how do I say would in Spanish? My general response is, well, you would or I would what? Because you need to know the verb afterwards. Today we're going to look at Spanish verbs in the conditional tense and look at the following questions. Who's doing the verb? Which subject pronoun do I need? What do I need to do to create the stem for the verb? And what are the correct endings that need to be added? Our aims are to learn how to recognise regular and irregular conditional tense verbs and to learn how to form regular and irregular conditional tense verbs. Firstly, what is the conditional tense? Conditional tense verbs describe an action that would happen in the future, if, for example, something else were to happen as well. Examples in English are, I would run and I would hide, if a bear was chasing me. The great thing about Spanish is that the endings are exactly the same as the imperfect tense endings for IR and ER verbs. Think of this analogy. Verbs are not like flowers in the conditional tense. Okay, let's see why. Verbs in the conditional tense are like building blocks because they look to the future. As a result, you add endings to infinitives. Think of it as building to the future, or in the case of the conditional tense, how things would be in the future. There is also a magic letter. Ooh! All endings should come directly after the magic R in every case. We'll find out more about what that means later. Step 1. Choose the person doing the verb. This will tell you which ending to use. But remember, you don't have to use the subject pronoun in Spanish unless you need to clarify who you are talking about. And here are the subject pronouns in Spanish. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted. Nosotros, vosotros, ellos, ellas, ustedes. Step 2 is to add the correct ending to make the conditional tense. The great thing is that the endings are exactly the same as the imperfect tense endings for ER and IR verbs. Ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. Now you'll see a demonstration of how to apply this knowledge in some examples. When creating verbs yourself, you can either use a paper dictionary or an online dictionary like wordreference.com. Right, let's have a look at number 1. We would dance. Firstly, we need to find the verb to dance. So let's type dance into here. As we scroll down, we see that dance, there's the verb to dance to music, bailar. So we first type in the infinitive. Because it's we would dance, we look on our little chart here, nosotros, we, iamos. So we put that at the end. Control at to give us the I with the accent, and then amos, bailaríamos. Next, they would look. Let's type in look into wordreference.com. And here we see a look, as in if looks could kill. Lots of useful phrases there. We scroll down, we see the verb to look, as in to see or glance, mirar. So mirar. Then we see because it's they, ellos, ellas, it's ian, mirarían. Next, it would finish. First we need the verb to finish. So we type finish into the dictionary. And as we find, to complete, let's use terminar. And because it's it, el or ella, as in school, el colegio would obviously be the same as el because it's masculine. We put I accent a, terminaría. Next, you singular would go. Let's look up the word to go. Now if we look down, to move or to travel, that's the one we want, ir. So we type in ir, to go. Now it's you singular would go. So as we see here, second person singular, tú, and the ending is ias, irías. Next, I would drink. So first we find out the verb to drink, and it gives us a drink, any liquid. Now we don't want a drink, we want the verb. And here we see it is beber. And because it's I, yo, then we put ia at the end. Bebería. Now because you would need to clarify whether it's el, ella or yo, given the fact the endings are the same, You could use yo at the start to specify. Okay, now look at the following 3 examples and conjugate verbs by following the patterns. Remember the 3 important steps. Pause the video to complete each task before carrying on, and remember, practice makes perfect. So here we see hablar, to speak. And here we see hablaría, I would speak. Hablarías, you singular would speak. Hablaría, he or she would speak. Hablaríamos, we would speak. Hablaríais, you plural would speak. Hablarían, they would speak. Remember, you don't need to use a subject pronoun unless you need to specify who you're talking about. So, copy this verb down and conjugate 2 of the other verbs following the same pattern as hablar. Pause the recording before you carry on. Now we'll look at an ER verb, comer, to eat. Comería, I would eat. Comerías, you would eat. Comería, he or she would eat. Comeríamos, we would eat. Comeríais, you plural would eat. Comerían, they would eat. Remember, you don't need to use a subject pronoun unless you need to specify who you're talking about. Copy down this verb and then conjugate 2 of these other ER verbs that follow the same pattern as comer. And remember to pause the recording before you carry on. Now, an IR verb, vivir, to live. Viviría, I would live. Vivirías, you would live. Viviría, he or she would live. Viviríamos, we would live. Viviríais, you plural would live. Vivirían, they would live. Notice how the magic R has been kept in all 3 of these examples. Now conjugate 2 of these other verbs following the same pattern as vivir, once you've copied down vivir in its full form. And remember to pause the video before you carry on. Okay, here's a reminder of the Spanish conditional tense. This is the way to say I would. So you need your stem, which, as you see from the example here, is the infinitive, except when the verb is irregular. But then you add your ending, and these endings are exactly the same as the imperfect tense for ER and IR verbs. Ia, ias, ia, iamos, iais, ian. Okay, hablaría, I would speak. Comería, he or she would eat. And viviríamos, we would live. Now translate these verbs into Spanish, remembering those important steps. For example, por ejemplo, número 1, I would copy. Yo copiaría. So pause the video and complete the activity and then mark your work. And remember, if you get it wrong, correct your answer so you can learn from your mistake. Número 2, she would travel. Ella viajaría. Número 3, they would punish. Castigarían. Número 4, we would lose. Perderíamos. Número 5, you singular would wear. Llevarías. Número 6, he would write. Escribiría. Notice how we've only used yo, ella, él when we need to specify who was actually doing the verb. There are always some irregular verbs, and these are very important irregular verbs that need to be considered. Can you guess which ones? Well, they are some of the usual suspects: tener, hacer, poder, haber, salir, decir, querer, and venir. And here are the stems. What we'd like to do is copy down the English, the Spanish infinitive, and then the stem in this chart below. This will give you a reference chart to look at when you're doing the next activity. The good news is that the endings are still the same, so no need to worry too much, because once you know the stems, you just need to apply all your wonderful knowledge to create the conditional tense. So pause the video and copy this table down before you carry on. Now translate these verbs into Spanish, remembering the important steps and the fact that these are all irregular. Pause the video and complete the activity and then mark your work. And remember, if you get it wrong, correct your answer so you learn from your mistake. Número 1, I would have. Yo tendría. Número 2, he would do or make. Él haría. Número 3, we would be able to. Podríamos. Número 4, you singular would put. Pondrías. Número 5, I would say. Yo diría. Número 6, they would go out. Saldrían. See how you've done, and remember, if you've got them wrong, just make a little correction so you can learn from your mistake. Today we've answered the question, how do you say would in Spanish? We use the conditional tense. We've looked at who's doing the verb, which subject pronoun we need, and what we need to do to create the stem for the verb. We've also looked at all the correct endings that need to be added. Our aims were to learn how to recognise regular and irregular conditional tense verbs, and to learn how to form regular and irregular conditional tense verbs as well. Muy bien. Adiós.